learn how to make half square triangles 3 ways. So the first way we're going to learn is to make 2 at a time. So I do have some printables, so go ahead and grab those, but for our first one, is 2 at a time. I have a handy formula here, but if you just have a finished size that you're looking for, then you can reference the chart to know what size to cut to begin with. So we're going to be making 3-inch half square triangles for all of these. So according to our chart, according to our formula, we need 2 squares that are 4 inches big. So I like to have 2 contrasting colors, so a light and a dark. I'd like to draw on the back of my light colored fabric. So I do things a little bit different than a lot of people. Most people will say draw a line from corner to corner on the back side, and then you'll sew 1/4 of an inch away from that line. Well, I find that I'm not very accurate when I do that. So instead, I line up the 1/4 inch marking from corner to corner, and then I draw along the side of the ruler, and that gives me my stitching line. So I find that it's much more accurate. It does take a little bit longer to draw the lines, but I find it's more accurate for me. So you can try that if you'd like. So next we'll just take our 2 squares of fabric. We'll place one right side up, and the other one will be right side down with the lines that we drew facing up. So then we will just take this over to the sewing machine, try to keep it lined up, and we will just stitch along both of these lines that we drew. So we have our seams sewn. The next thing we'll do is we'll just grab a cutting mat, and we're going to cut this half square triangle right in half. We're going to line up our ruler from corner to corner right between those lines that we just stitched, and we'll just slice it right in half. Okay, so the next thing, one handy thing that I like about this cutting chart that I've created is that I make them just a little bit big so that you can trim them out to be exact. Because you can see on this block that I didn't get it perfect, and I don't want to have to worry if I don't get it perfect, so I find that it's easier to just allow for a little bit of leeway and trim up the block after the fact. So let me show you on the other one how I'm lining it up and trimming it. Okay, so we have our half square triangle, we have our ruler. So there's lots of different rulers. I say use the one you have. If you don't have one, I do recommend this. I find it's easy to use, but a lot of times that's just because I'm used to using it, so it's easy for me. So along here there are markings. So we need to trim this half square triangle to 3.5 inches, and then once it's sewn into the block, it will be a 3-inch unit here. So we're just going to line up the 3.5 inch marking right along the seam of that half square triangle, and then we'll just like move it back and forth whichever way so that we can trim a little bit off of both sides. Grab my ironing mat here, and we will just press these open real quickly. Now one thing, whichever side that you would like the seam to face towards is the side that you want to have facing up. So I generally like to have my half square triangles with the seam toward the dark color. So I just place the darker color on top, the lighter color on bottom. When I lift it up and press, then when you look on the back, it is pressed towards that darker fabric. And so then the last thing that we'll need to do is just trim off these little tails. And then we have our half square triangle. So that is how you do 2 at a time. The next method is 4 at a time. So I have another printable for that one. These are all in a bundle, so if you sign up for the email, then you'll get all 3 in the same PDF. But if you print them front and back, you can have the front side will have the formula. It will have like a lot of common block sizes, so you don't have to use the formula. You can just glance and see what size you need to cut. And then on the back side, I have instructions and I have diagrams on how to do it. So make sure you go ahead and grab those. But for a 3-inch block, if you're making 4 at a time, we're going to start with 2 squares of fabric again, but this time they are going to be 5 3/4. And so this one is a little bit different than the other. We're going to take 1 square of fabric, place it right side up. The other square of fabric will place right side down. Now for this method, we are going to just stitch all the way around the square. And then we want our stitching line to be 1/4 of an inch away from the edge on all the sides. Okay, so we have our square sewn together just along all of the edges, 1/4 of an inch. And next we're just going to take a ruler here. I have one that's a little bit longer for this. We're going to line it up from corner to corner, and then we will just slice right down the middle, just like that. And then we will line it up the other direction from corner to corner and slice again. So this will give us 4 half square triangles. These are also created to be just a little bit big, so we can trim them down. So we'll go ahead and do that as well. Now there is one thing about this method that a lot of quilters don't like, and so it is not a popular method. And that is because the way that you sew it, you're stitching along the outside and then you cut in the middle. What happens is you're cutting along the bias edge. And so what can happen is your block, I always have trouble on those corners. Because these edges here are on the bias, they can have a lot more stretch this way. Let's look at our other one. There's not a lot of stretch, but on these ones there is. So that can cause warping and distortion. I do use this method. If I just need 4, then I will use it, but I am just mindful and careful as I'm putting the blocks together and as I'm working with them, that I don't stretch and pull. When I'm pressing, I don't, I'm not too forceful with my iron or whatever to make it stretch and pull, because I have noticed it can warp and twist just a little bit. So that is something to be aware of, but it is handy if you only have, if you only need 4, then why make 8, or why do the 2 at a time method that takes longer to make 4. Anyway, so then we'll just go ahead and we will press again and trim the tails, just the same as we did before. Okay, so our last method is to make 8 at a time, and I like this method a lot because you can just make a whole bunch at the same time. So our little chart here tells us for a 3-inch finish size, we need to start with 2 squares of fabric that are 8 inches. Now this is another one of those that I'd like to mark on the back. So I just grabbed my scratch paper just so I don't draw on my background here. And we're going to do the same thing that we did with the 2 at a time method to begin with. So we'll just line up our ruler from corner to corner. I usually choose the light colored fabric just because you can see your pencil markings easier. So I will just do that, and make sure that you use your 1/4 inch marking. This ruler has lots of lines, and I have sometimes gotten the wrong line. So make sure you're using that 1/4 inch marking to line up corner to corner. So this is the same as our first method, right? Now what's different about it is we're going to turn it, and we're going to make 2 more sets of lines. We're going to be going on the other 2 corners, and we'll just do that same thing. And I just use like a regular pencil. You could use a water soluble or a heat dissolving type pen or pencil, but I just use a regular one, and it seems to be fine. So again, we're going to put our 2 squares of fabric right sides together. I have the lines on top that I drew, and I'm going to stitch along each of the lines this way and each of the lines this way. Okay, so I have the stitching done on that square. So we'll just place it on our cutting mat here, and we are going to cut this in half. So I like to use the lines on my ruler along the edge, and then I'm lining up this side with these 2 where the seams meet right there, and then I know that I'm doing a straight line here. So I'm going to cut it this direction in half. Then I'm going to turn it this way horizontally, and again I'm going to line up where the seams meet, and then along the edge I'm going to make sure that it is straight along with one of the other lines along here, so that I know that my cut is straight. So we cut both directions that way, and then we cut between the seams diagonally as well in both directions. So once we do that, we will have 8 half square triangles. So that's an easy method to make 8 at a time, and this this method that also makes them just a little bit oversized, so you can cut them down some. So we're going to trim them to 3.5 inches. That will make them 3 inches once they are sewn into a block. Okay, so once again we will press the squares open and trim off those little tails, and we will have a quick and easy way to make 8 half square triangles at the same time. Okay, so that is how you make half square triangles. The 3 different methods are 2 at a time, 4 at a time, or 8 at a time. And go ahead and grab this printable. I'm really excited to have this because I'm going to laminate or put these in sheet protectors so that I can keep them by my sewing machine. But I really think it's going to be handy to have this chart here with just ready-made measurements all ready for you. So go ahead and grab that. The link will be in the description.